Hello and welcome back to the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. This is Penny Sansbury and Amy Cornell for the Minisode. And today we're talking about, well, this is actually verbatim, and I don't know if this is the final title that's going to wind up on the on the podcast, because sometimes we have like placeholder titles, and then the final title we're like, well, we should probably reword this. So here's what Amy put on the notes: how not to screw up your website, which I thought was just absolutely fabulous. And we did decide before we started recording this, we did decide that we are going to do a full-length episode on author websites, because I think that's important. But let me start this off with a confession. So when I was first in business 21 years ago, and I like to say BA, so before Amy, I self-designed a website using whatever it was, Front Page or some crazy thing. And I crammed everything on that homepage. So I was doing speaking that was on there. I had books that was on there. I mean, it was a disaster. In fact, somehow I got looped in with More Magazine. They were doing a story on mistakes that female entrepreneurs make. And I said, and I asked them not to quote me, but they did, that my first website looked like a dog had designed it after a tequila bender. And
I love that.
That's the quote they put in the magazine. I was just like, thanks. I guess everything is on the record. And I should have known that as a media person, but it's just like, hey, so this is really funny. And I just want to say, I don't even know why I would say that if I wasn't going to. She was like, that's a great quote. I'm like, yeah, don't put it in the magazine. Of course it was.
Right.
But Amy, you see this a lot too when you vet new authors, right?
Yes, absolutely. That is one thing that when an author reaches out to us and we start exploring, like, does this make sense? Should we have a chat about collaborating on something? We definitely like to check out what you have going on, your website, social, how Amazon looks, if you already have books out, things like that, just to kind of get a feel where our jumping off point will be. Mm-hmm. And so I definitely check out the website because it says a lot. Penny, you say all the time, everything is your resume, and it's absolutely true. And your website does say a lot about you, whether it's intentional or not. So, but I will say one of the biggest, I think, takeaways for this minisode, and it's a good jumping off point to a longer format episode that Penny mentioned we'll be doing, is to really understand the purpose of your website and really not to treat it as a digital resume or like your online biography of everything that's ever happened in your life, because your reader market is there for a very specific reason. And to be totally honest, it's not necessarily to learn every detail about your life up to that point. That's not necessarily relevant to them. They want to stay in the fantasy, especially if you're a fiction author, So one example, and I actually see this happen a lot, would be, say, a cozy mystery author puts their LinkedIn, profile front and center on their ways to contact them or check out my social. And their day job is being a CPA. Now, there is no connection between cozy mystery and being a CPA. Now we're going to get somebody writing in going like, wait a minute, I wrote a cozy mystery and the lead character is a CPA. That's not my point. My point is that those two things are not connected, and you're kind of pulling your reader or your fan or your potential buyer out of the fantasy that they want to stay in because they are a mystery fan, if that makes sense. So don't just throw everything on your website because you have it available to you. I mean, is that a fair way to put it, Penny? Like, just because it exists doesn't mean it belongs on your website.
Well, but I think that it's really, you want to be careful not to interrupt the user experience, right?
Yes.
So when you have a cozy mystery, just to stay with that example, and you put something on your website like, stuff about your business that's not necessarily connected to the cozy, while you may feel that it's interesting for your reader to know more about you, and certainly it is, there's kind of a time and a place for that. And you don't want to, again, interrupt the user's experience on your website, because then you lose them. Mm-hmm. And when we do the long form website episode, we're going to talk a little bit more about how important, Amy and I, and this in particular is a week where Amy's been doing a lot of work on the website. Not that she doesn't design websites, so don't contact us and have Amy design your website, because she'll really hate me and probably stop doing this podcast. But the idea, she's been doing a lot of tweaks to the search engine optimization on the website and things like that. And she knows probably better than even I do how much we agonize over where every single thing goes on that website.
Oh yeah. How it's said, the order in which you say things, like you really have to be very conscientious, like you said, Penny, of the user experience, and any little, snag in that, potentially they're gone, all of a sudden they're confused, disinterested. You said something that wasn't applicable to them. So that's also something really important you have to keep in mind. It's like, how detailed and deep do you go into certain things at risk of alienating, a potential reader as well? Right. Not to stress y'all out, but we just mean you have to be really thoughtful and just throwing things up there to say that you included it, or because that feels like the right thing to do, oftentimes is not the most strategic way to build out your website.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll tell you something too, is that with all the work that you put into a website, one of the number one things that authors forget to put on their website is contact information, which sounds so crazy. Mm-hmm. And I think that this goes kind of to Amy's point too, is that, you want to have a website that balances out your brand and the message that you're going to give to your readers, but you also you don't want to forget the really important things. So the contact information, and something that Amy talks a lot about too, and we have had actual shows on, is, don't highlight the stuff you're not proud of. So the second thing that I see on author websites is social media icons that either go to pages that haven't been updated in forever, or they go to a 404 page, right? Mm-hmm. So, where they're just not even connected really to your social media.
Yeah, you see that a lot, where you click on somebody's Facebook icon and it goes to the Wix Facebook page. That's a common, if you're going to build your own website, it's a common platform. It can do great things, but I see that a lot where somebody used Wix to make their website. Those social icons automatically get plastered on there, and then they don't go anywhere that will actually benefit your reader. And it looks sloppy and unthoughtful. It sadly projects that you are not being mindful of their time and attention, is how it comes across. Whether, that's typically not what, an author ever means to do, but that's how the user ends up feeling, like you're sending me on this wild goose chase for nothing. That's nothing about you. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I think that it's really the website development, that when you're working with somebody to get a website done, or if you're doing it yourself, they can be really overwhelming. But honestly, the small details are what really make or break a website. The things that you want to pay attention to, the look of the website, as I mentioned, the contact information. And to kind of end with what we started on, is don't put anything on there that doesn't match your brand, the message that you're trying to get across to your reader, because you have something like 1/50th of a second to either keep people on your website or have them bounce off to somebody else's site. So, and like I said, we're going to do a long form, both on probably on optimizing your website, and then just on website design separately. We'll do a long form episode on that. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Penny Sansevieri and Amy Cornell. This is the Minisode of the Book Marketing Tips and Author Success Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. Bye-bye.